One of the tricky things when using ND filters with any camera is the fluctuations in light levels. And I'm using ND filters at the moment with the Pocket 3, but when you use individual ND filters over using variable ND filters, then it does get a little bit tricky to control those fluctuations in light if you don't change one specific setting. So with this one setting, there's one trick that you can do to stop those fluctuations with the light levels when you use individual ND filters, and I'll just basically show you how to do that in this video. The filters that I'm going to be using are from Freewell, and I think the pack is it's called an Everyday Essential or Ultimate Essential. I'll put a link in the description. I can't remember the name of the pack, but it basically has ND filters that go from ND8 all the way up to ND 1000, I think. And the reason that you want an all-day pack is so that if you're filming on an overcast day or you're filming on a bright sunny day, then you've got literally all of those filters that will accommodate the light levels. And also in that pack there's also a set which has polarizers as well, so they're a combined polarizer and ND filter. So if you're filming near water or reflective surfaces like glass or anything like that, then you can use the polarizers as well as having the ND filter at the same time, so that's really useful. Real quick though, I thought I'd just mention that for this whole video I'm shooting in D-Log-M, and I will colour grade the footage using film convert nitrate. So all the footage that you're seeing will have been colour graded with film convert nitrate, which is an awesome plugin for colour grading. And I've done a video on this, so I won't go into a lot of detail in this video because I've already done a video about my colour grading process already, and I'll put a link in the description to that. But one of the other things I was thinking that I could potentially do is a live stream where I just show you in real time how quick and how easy it is to actually colour grade D-Log-M footage. So if you want to see that, then you can also drop me a comment just to say, yeah, you would be quite interested in seeing something like that. So in order to use ND filters and not have to keep switching out and changing them every time the light levels change, so for example if you're going from a shady area to a sunny area, or the sun goes behind the clouds and then it comes back out again, then the setting to change is ISO if you have this on a fixed setting. And the reason that you want to change it is so that the camera has control, some form of control over your exposure, because your aperture is a fixed aperture, so you can't change that. Your shutter speed, if you're using ND filters, I'm guessing that you're trying to do the 180-degree shutter rule so that you can get that natural looking motion blur. So your shutter speed is going to be fixed. For me, I shoot, if you don't know what the 180-degree shutter rule is, it's basically having natural motion blur so that when you've got movement in the scene, it doesn't look kind of robotic. And in order to achieve that natural motion blur, whatever your frame rate is, you set your shutter speed to be double that. So I shoot with a frame rate of 25 FPS, and I set my shutter speed to 150th of a second when I'm using the ND filter. And so because that's also fixed and the camera can't change the shutter speed to adjust with the exposure, then the only thing that's left is the ISO. And so setting that to a minimum and maximum value enables the camera to just take control of the exposure and make sure that when your light levels are changing, that it can maintain the exposure that you set via your EV meter. So that's another setting. And so when you set your EV meter to whatever it is, whether it's 0 or minus 0.3, minus 0.7, it depends what you're setting it to, then you're basically telling the camera to use the ISO to maintain that EV meter value. And that's essentially what we want to do when we're using ND filters. So with that in mind, I tend to choose a minimum maximum value for my ISO based on my color profile. So if I'm shooting in the normal color profile, then the minimum maximum will be 100 to 3200. And if I'm shooting in D-Log-M, then it will be 50 to 3200. Let me just wait until they finish shouting. They're having a race at the moment. Ah, she lost. Oh, she's not happy that she lost. Anyway, so yeah, I set it based on the colour profile. And what I tend to do with the ND filter in picking out the right ND filter is I want to have my ISO fluctuating between 200 to 400. And what I mean by that is that the camera, when it's set to the minimum maximum, it will keep adjusting the ISO so that it's keeping your EV meter value, whatever you set it to. And so I like to have the ISO fluctuating between 200 to 400. And the reason I do that is because if the light levels suddenly change, then there's room for the camera to adjust without overexposing the footage or underexposing the footage. So to explain this a little bit further, if I put a filter on and it's sunny and I know that it's cloudy and the sun's going in and out of the clouds, then I'll choose a filter where the ISO will be around 150, so that when the sun comes back out, or when the sun goes behind the clouds and it gets a little bit darker, then the ISO will probably jump up to, I don't know, maybe 400, potentially even 800. It depends how dark it gets. But if I were to put an ND filter on when it was cloudy and I knew the sun was going to come out, then I'd be looking for an ND filter that had my ISO at around 400, 450, so that when the sun comes back out and the ISO drops, then it doesn't hit that minimum limit and then overexpose the footage. So let me just show you a little example of using a fixed ISO and then also using a minimum to maximum value. All right, so I've currently got my ISO set to 400, so it's just fixed at 400. I'm in a bit of a shady area at the moment, so I'm going to walk out into the sun, and then you should see that the footage is actually going to be overexposed because there's nothing else to control that fluctuation with the lights. So I'm fully in the sun now, and the footage should be looking quite overexposed. My EV meter is now reading 1, whereas before it was reading minus 0.3. So it's got quite a big jump. Okay, so I've switched my ISO back over to the minimum maximum value of 50 to 3200. And when I looked, it was fluctuating between 290 and 350. So it's obviously doing its thing. And when I walk out into the sunny area, so I'm standing in the shady area again, when I walk out into the sunny area, the exposure should remain the same and the EV meter should still be reading minus 0.3 like it is at the moment. So at this point, I am fully in the sun, not overexposed, and the EV meter is still reading minus 0.3. I'm just brighter because obviously I'm in the sun, but the scene isn't overexposed at all. So you can see just by setting that minimum maximum ISO value that it just allows you to keep filming, not have to worry about swapping out your filters when you're switching between different light levels. The camera's just going to work it out for you because it's literally the only way that it can be done, by changing the ISO. You don't have to worry about having the ISO set too high as well for the maximum value, because even if it has to get pushed up to say 800 or 1600, the footage is still going to look pretty good. You don't have to worry about noise being introduced to the footage, because I haven't actually noticed that with the Pocket 3. You're still going to get quite a clean image. Anyway, if you want to check out my other settings that I use with the Pocket 3 to get the overall look and get a high quality look, then you can watch this next video.